Well, James Douma is at it again, creating insightful, thought-provoking posts on X that I think everyone should be aware of. So I'm creating this video to go through both of his articles and my responses to them. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Saint Know-It-All. Yeah, people have been saying that about my background, I know. It's a weird place. It's the bedroom of the apartment that we're staying in California, so what can I say? It's just some sort of wicker thing behind me, but for whatever reason it looks like a halo, so I'm going with Saint Know-It-All, so there we go. It's not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, I'll be here until our trip to X takeover at the end of July. Remember, it's the 26th through 28th of July. I will be there along with Dr. Scott Walter and a bunch of other people, so definitely come join us. All right, and on to the topic du jour, James's articles. I did DM him and asked him if he had time. He is very busy, unfortunately, so he is unable to do this. So what I'm going to do is just use his articles as a proxy for James Douma. And as you'll see, they're very thought-provoking, very insightful, etc. So I'm going to start with this first one he did a couple of days ago. You can see it's got 365,000 views already, which is pretty fantastic. So anyway, it's called FAAS, or Full Self-Driving as a Service. Tesla Robotaxi is going to demonstrate software growth rates in its early years. On top of that, it will grow to significant market share and keep that market share for a long time. So the main statement here is software growth rates. In other words, growth rates that are not usually hampered by physical objects, like manufacturing this remote control or something like that requires manufacturing a physical object, and so it takes a while for that to ramp up. It's difficult to manufacture objects. Software, on the other hand, once you make a piece of software like Microsoft Word or Tesla's Full Self-Driving, whatever that thing is, you can copy paste that into a number of environments very, very rapidly. But that depends on those environments being ready. You have to have software in which to put the hardware. In other words, I have to have my computer to put the software on if I want a piece of software from my computer. So that's one critical difference to keep in mind between Tesla and other FSD manufacturers, other potential autonomous vehicular software manufacturers. Anyway, on top of that, he says it will grow to significant market share and keep that market share for a long time. And that's a really important part as well. We'll table that for a bit. He actually gets back to that in the second article in more detail, so we'll table that for a little while. Anyway, he dials it back in time 20 years, or about 2 decades ago, and says, in 2003, Skype launched an internet protocol voice service, and within a year it had 1 million users. I remember that time. A year later, it had over 50 million. It was the fastest growing new technology in history. This was possible because it directly substituted for an existing, widely used service, in other words, long-distance phone calls. And for those of you who are too young, long-distance phone calls used to be a thing, and you counted the minutes of the phone call when you called your grandma or something because it cost a lot of money to make a long-distance phone call. Seems kind of crazy these days, but that was indeed the case back just a couple of decades ago. And speaking of that, as he says, and also because it did so at much lower price point using already available infrastructure, personal computers, and the internet. And remember, in order for the software to work, you have to have the hardware, so keep that in mind, because that is part of the point he's making here. Anyway, he continues on, it didn't need to generate demand because demand for phone calls was already widespread, obviously. It didn't need to distribute new equipment or build new infrastructure because we had things like computers and internet access and so forth. It was a direct substitution of an expensive service that hundreds of millions of people used frequently. All it needed was a software download and a cheap sound card. Though the growth of Skype was a novel phenomenon at the time, similar explosive growth services have occurred several times since. They share common elements. The core technology change is a software upgrade riding on existing infrastructure, in other words, hardware, and the core service is a direct substitute for something already in wide use but greatly reduced cost or with greatly increased utility. This is what Google Docs, Slack, Zoom, Spotify, Airbnb, Uber, and Netflix did. All very high growth in their early years, and so far all of them durable even in volatile and competitive areas. More on that in a minute, but first, with summer travel to the beach and the sun, it's more important than ever for all of us to take care of our skin to keep it looking and feeling healthy. The trouble is, I'm no skincare expert, and that's why today's sponsor, Geology, is a great skincare partner. They have scientifically created a number of skincare solutions based on your own unique age, skin type, and other factors. You take a simple quiz, and Geology's smart algorithms determine what you need for optimal skincare. I'm care routine number 30, and it's great for my skin. And best yet, the daytime cream has a built-in SPF 15 sun protection, so when I'm out and about, my face is protected from the summer sun. Geology is scientifically based, built around proven ingredients trusted by dermatologists, and people love Geology. It's gotten over 10,000 5-star reviews and turned many a skeptic into a believer. And best yet, Geology is simple, efficient, and very effective. Take their quiz, get your personalized skincare routine mailed directly to you, follow their super simple instructions in the morning and at night, and get better, younger looking skin in no time. And just for you, my viewers, Geology is offering an amazing 70% off their skincare trial set. Be sure to click my link below to get this amazing deal, or feel free to check them out at Target or on Amazon. I love Geology because it's powered by facts, not fads. It's a simple-to-use routine designed just for you and built around just a handful of powerful, proven ingredients that have been trusted by dermatologists for decades. So what are you waiting for? Be sure to take the Geology quiz and save 70% off your skincare trial set. And now let's get back to it. We are going to see Tesla do something similar with robotaxi service when it ships in the near future, because the infrastructure is already in place. Smartphones in every pocket, millions of full self-driving capable Tesla vehicles on the road, and road infrastructure everywhere that people want to go. Robotaxi directly substitutes for transportation services already used by billions of people, in other words, either driving yourself or having somebody else drive you, and it does so at radically lower cost of provision and generally greater convenience. Now, this is hypothetical, of course. It could do this, it hopefully will do this at radically lower cost. We don't know this for a fact yet because, of course, we're predicting the future, but the idea is if you take the driver out of the car and you drive the car about 5 times more than us normal drivers do, you're going to reduce the cost of transportation from approximately 72 cents a mile down to, Elon has said, a quarter of a mile or something along those lines. Even if it ends up being 50 cents a mile or something, that still is a massive cost savings for most people, and therefore people will adopt a technology like this. Another good point here for the skeptics who say, I will always keep my car, you can pry my car out of my cold dead hands kind of thing, is, as James said, Skype didn't immediately eliminate long distance charges and not everyone used it. Naturally, because telecom is a big system with a lot of inertia. The growth of Skype was nonetheless explosive, and telecommunications service was forever changed. The market was forced to adapt to new low-cost voice-over-IP internet protocol technology, and competing services flooded the market. Today, nobody counts the minutes when we call family in another state, and overseas calls are no longer an extravagance, and yes, they used to be. Skype had first-mover advantage, and this was enough to get them a huge valuation when they were acquired by eBay in 2005, but they had no durable advantages over the many competitors that quickly emerged, and there were no technical obstacles preventing incumbent services from dropping prices. Long distance was a very high margin business at the time. By contrast, Tesla has durable advantages in the robotaxi space. It is the only entity with an existing fleet of millions of robotaxi capable vehicles already deployed, which is very true. It is uniquely positioned to rapidly ramp up manufacturing base for a new generation of low-cost self-driving vehicles, which is also true, and no other large volume manufacturer makes electric, software-driven, internet-connected vehicles with all-around cameras, redundant computer-controlled critical control and sensing systems, and powerful compute. Nobody else has the data center infrastructure, the domain expertise, the custom hardware design, and the manufacturing capabilities, and the massive software development resources. Nobody else is vertically integrated and self-sufficient in their ability to bring together all the elements to make widespread robotaxi service a near-term reality. And there are no credible candidates for another company that might gain these in the near future. Tesla is unique. So that's a lot to unpack there, but the basic argument is that nobody else has the hardware to do this. And as I've said in previous videos, really Tesla's full self-driving stack, the cameras and the computer board, and used to be the ultrasonic sensors and the radar and stuff, but not even that anymore. But those basic elements that Tesla, very visionarily included starting in 2018, 2019 with their vehicles, those elements allow the software to be uploaded to the vehicle very, very easily and allow the vehicles to be able to turn into robotaxis. And of course, future vehicles can also make use of this as well. But the important part is that you already have over 6 million Teslas on the road right now with the capability to turn on full self-driving as a service, FAAS, if the software gets good enough. And that is something that nobody else can do. And that's a big difference between Skype, which leveraged, internet communications and computers and all that stuff. That was stuff that other people controlled, right? Apple made computers, Dell made computers, Cisco made internet routers and things like that, right? So they were using other people's stuff to build upon, which is great, and it's fantastic that they were able to do that, but a lot of other people were able to copy them as well. The situation for Tesla is entirely different. Nobody else has vehicles like this on the roads. And yes, you could argue Mobileye might have something like that, but they don't have the vertical integration. They have their systems on a bunch of cars, in fact, many more than Tesla does, but they don't have the vertical integration from the ground up. They don't appear to have the training data that they need, and certainly they don't have the willpower that Tesla does to push full self-driving as a service into the fore. So as James said, Tesla really is unique. Continuing on here, incumbents cannot lower prices to compete because transportation, unlike long-distance service in 2003, is a low-margin business. That is true. We're talking single-digit profit if you make any at all. To compete, others will need to field their own low-cost robotaxi fleets. To do that, they'll need to master high-volume EV manufacturing, develop the software infrastructure needed to mature internet-connected fleets, and develop both the hardware and software needed for full self-driving. Even then, they will need to ramp to millions of vehicles per year and stay at that level for years before they have the foundation needed to compete profitably. That is going to take quite a bit of time, and all that time Tesla will be rapidly ramping up in the most profitable markets and service segments. Returning to the Skype example, few people abandoned their phones when they started using Skype, and even 20 years later, phones and phone service still exist. Yes, that's true. But phone service was forced to adapt, and under the hood, Internet Protocol dominates telecom today, not just for voice, but also for all the post-telephony services that IP enables. Those post-telephony ones are the large majority of all the many services your smartphone provides, including if you're watching this video on YouTube or X, that means you're watching it on IP-enabled tech on your phone. Similarly, robotaxi service will not eliminate conventional vehicle use overnight. Many people will switch to it, but many more will use it alongside incumbent services. And I've talked about this before. I've said what will probably happen in countries like the United States is people will move from 2-car families to 1-car families, or 3-car families to 2-car families, or something like that. We won't give up all of our vehicles immediately. It will take some time to do that, but what we'll do is we'll reduce the number of vehicles we have. And that's actually a really, really critical point that a lot of people who reject the idea of Americans giving up their cars just don't understand, is that we might give up half of our cars or something like that rather than all of them, and even that is a really big step forward. And then, as James continues, probably most personal transportation will gradually give way to self-driving cars. But beyond this, self-driving vehicles will, like Internet Protocol technology in the post-telephony era, be the foundation for an ecosystem of new services that will eventually dwarf the current market for cars. Tesla will play a substantial role in that ecosystem, in part because their first-to-scale advantage, in part because of their ability to get to and maintain lowest cost of service through vertical integration and relentless product focus, and in part because they aren't dependent on third parties. That is a really important thing. They control their own destiny to a unique degree and are thus able to focus on delivering the best service at the lowest cost. Tesla has already seeded the world with the hardware and built the factories and supply chains, and that is the Trojan horse that I was talking about. After 10 years of focused, resource-intensive effort, the program is well advanced. Soon it will be released out into the world, where it will grow quickly and become a dominant transport mode that will persist for quite a long time. And let's not forget to mention highly disruptive. So tacking on my repost to his article, I said, an excellent thorough post by James, nicely done. For years, Teslas have been an autonomy Trojan horse, like I said, that very few could see for what it was, a way to get autonomous-enabled vehicles on the roads in massive numbers. I will only add that due to the high barrier for entry TAAS, or FAAS as James puts it, other car companies will likely not even try to play once they realize how hard it will be to catch Tesla. Rather, I think they will scramble to license Tesla's full self-driving for their vehicles, both private party and robotaxi, and will, perhaps grudgingly, pay Tesla their tithe to use the software/hardware. This will propel Tesla even further ahead, as they will gain even more market share that way. Perhaps a Chinese company or two will be able to compete and grab market share, but I, like James, don't see anywhere else in the world where enough drive and vertical integration exists for anyone else to catch Tesla. To those with the vision and perseverance go the spoils. So my additional thought is that you're going to see a lot of people scramble to license the hardware and the software from Tesla as soon as they see that the jig is up, right? That they don't have any chance of competing. I have a feeling that may be happening behind the scenes. Again, Ford would be the company I would look to as the sort of bellwether because they were the first ones to adopt the North American charging standard, and Jim Farley and Elon Musk have a good relationship, but we will see. Once that happens with one of these companies, it's likely to happen with a lot of companies very quickly. And again, this could be for personal use, as I said in the post. It could be just that they'll put it in cars so that the cars can drive people around. But once you have that technology in place and once you can license that, there's no reason why they can't make robotaxi specific vehicles from Ford or from GM or from Toyota or whoever instead. Well, Toyota's a joke because they don't even have any EVs at this point, but from other companies that are actually working on this kind of a thing. And speaking of software like margins, think about what Tesla gets for that. They get a royalty for the hardware, and then they could charge a piece of the pie for every mile that is driven on these systems over time. And that's just pure profit for Tesla. They don't really have to do much at all in order to pull in massive amounts of revenue. So that's even more revenue from this system than what James was talking about. All right, and then let's turn to a follow-up from James from yesterday. He's quoting Elon here at the beginning. All that matters is improving Tesla full self-driving AI such that miles between interventions is much, much greater than human. And that is a critical point. Tesla is trying to do that. They're trying to make the roads safer for, humans. And in order to do that, you really want robots driving the cars. Once they're good enough, because they can be way, way better than people. They never get distracted. They never get tired. They never go out and drink and drive. They don't do all of that kind of stuff. You also don't have the substandard drivers, yes, because half of you have to be below average. That's just the way it works. So if you have robotaxis that are all identically really, really good drivers, that automatically makes the world safer. Even if they're not perfect at this point, it makes the world safer if they're just better than average. Anyway, following up on that, James is replying to Patrick Riley, his response to full self-driving as a service, which I just read. Patrick said, "I still believe Tesla FSD is inevitable, but I'm not convinced it's the 10 times plug-in improvement many are making it out to be in the 1 to 2 year time frame." And 1 to 2 years is pretty aggressive, I have to admit as well. "I could see it rolling out slowly and carefully, heavily supervised and gradually over several use cases, starting with simple shuttle runs on known routes and cargo convoys, and eventually being acceptable for widespread commercial use on per region basis." James responded to this by saying, "This is an excellent response with other interesting points, but here I respond to just one part because it demonstrates a common misconception about Tesla's approach to full self-driving and how it differs from other robotaxi efforts. And in particular, the response shows why we should be assuming that unsupervised full self-driving is going to ramp quickly. Robotaxi deployments to date have been laser focused on minimizing negative events that robotaxis are involved in, with less regard to minimizing the overall accident rate in the wider world. Of course, robotaxi companies all have the objective of improving public safety, but to date they have not been willing to stick with it at the risk of their own reputation. And this is a critically important point and one of the big reasons Tesla is so unique. It's not just that they're vertically integrated and that they can do it, it's that they're willing to do it. That is a really big deal, and not a lot of companies are willing to do something like this. As James continues, this is not Tesla's approach, as is clearly evident in both management's public statements and in the demonstrated tactics they've employed to date in deploying their driver assistance systems. They have been very clear on this point repeatedly in public statements, and they have backed up their words with their deeds. In a nutshell, if you have a system that is robustly, statistically safer than human drivers, but which is imperfect, as Tesla's full self-driving is, and pretty much always will be, nothing can be perfect in the real world, should you rapidly scale up that system, or should you wait until it is even better? If you scale rapidly, there will be less overall harm because, of course, statistically you're safer, but more of that harm will be associated with your own actions. The approach by robotaxi deployments so far has been to avoid expanding while the system is imperfect so as to avoid public backlash. And I completely agree with James on this next point. This is the wrong answer. Once a system is statistically better than human to a significant degree, the right answer is to ramp it up as fast as possible. That is exactly what Tesla will do, as they have said and as they have shown. And again, not just with full self-driving, but with lots of things. They are willing to put the company's reputation on the line because they know that it's the correct thing to do. This is the trolley problem. Do you take action to save many lives, even if the result of your action is the loss of a few lives? It's often posed as a philosophical question, but it's actually a moral dilemma. Will you do what is right for the world, even if it will make your own situation difficult? Elon has been absolutely clear on this point. Tesla is going to do the right thing, even if it causes trouble for them. Now, I will back this off a little bit. The trolley problem is a moral, ethical dilemma, but it is a philosophical one as well, because you can take different sort of philosophical stances on whether being involved in an action. And if you don't know the trolley problem, by the way, it's, let's say there are 5 people who are about to be injured by a trolley that the trolley's going this direction. Think of San Francisco, those little trolleys, right? And there's 5 people, like, I don't know, trapped on the tracks, and it's gonna kill them. You can pull a lever. You're standing next to a lever that will cause the trolley to move over to another track, but the consequence of that is that it will kill one person on that other track. So, you have is the greater good more important than the lesser good? Is taking an action warranted in this case where you're going to be responsible for somebody's death? There's a lot of interesting questions. Anyway, James takes a particular angle on this. It's not the only one that you can discuss with the trolley problem, but that doesn't really matter. From this particular point of view, taking the action and killing one person as opposed to letting 5 people die is a greater good type of philosophical argument, which means that even though you're taking responsibility for killing one person, you're saving 5, and that is a net good. So by doing the right thing, James is buying into that particular philosophical bent, and that's perfectly fine, but I just want to be explicit about that. Anyway, continuing on here, once Tesla has solid statistics showing that unsupervised FSD is safer than human drivers, they will ramp robotaxi as fast as they can. This is no minor moral quandary. Over 1 million people a year die in traffic accidents. 50 million are seriously injured. Every day that robotaxi development is delayed is thousands of deaths and 100,000 injuries every single day. These are especially impactful to our economy and our families because, unlike disease, and this is really interesting, traffic accidents disproportionately harm the young and productive, in other words, people who are driving more, the parents and breadwinners, in other words, people who are driving more, and the people who most support our society through their work, and the people with the most productive and high-quality years ahead of them. Delaying early deployment likely slows wider deployment, and being timid about rolling it out will definitely slow down wider deployment. We need to ramp this technology and ramp it aggressively, not when it's perfect, but when it's good, in other words, statistically better than human drivers. And just as soon as it is good, because millions of lives are on the line. We should celebrate Tesla's boldness here, if nowhere else. But whether we do celebrate it or whether critics bash it won't matter much to their actions. It's going to be what Tesla does. And by this, of course, he's implying that Tesla will do the right thing and will ramp this as quickly as possible. And then finally, my response to James's post, another gem from James, and really truly it is. He rightly points out 2 critically important factors in the rollout of autonomous driving, or AD. 1, there is a moral imperative to scale AD once it is statistically better than human drivers, no matter what. 2, there is a huge lack of will to do this on the part of companies due to the massive societal and legal backlash that will certainly happen due to this scaling. These 2 factors are antithetical, and only a truly disruptive or crazy company like Tesla will be willing to put their own reputations and possibly their very company on the line to do the proper moral thing. And yet, without a company like Tesla, we will surely never get to safer roads via wide-scale AD adoption in the next 10 to 20 years because no solution will be perfect. And without perfection, there will inevitably be some accidents and even loss of life. Most players cannot tolerate this reality, but Elon Musk and Tesla clearly can. What should, in my opinion, happen is that governments, states and/or countries should shield a company like Tesla from excessive legal exposure if they are clearly doing the correct thing for society at large. But the likelihood that this will happen is pathetically small, and I really believe that. I think it's really, really small that'll happen, which means that it's even fewer companies that will be willing to do something like this. Full self-driving might not seem like the, quote, Model 3 production hell bet the company moment, but with Tesla willing to go out on a legal limb to do the correct ethical thing, it could in fact be that very thing. We should all therefore support Tesla to the best of our abilities, whatever they are. So in short, society needs Tesla to do this, to roll out robotaxis as quickly as possible once it is evident they are statistically safer than human drivers in general, right? Just even the average driver. And number 2, nobody else is going to help them, and in fact there will be a lot of headwinds, which means that Tesla really is potentially betting the company on the fact that this will work and there won't be too many legal repercussions. So as I concluded, we all need to support Tesla in this endeavor because it is morally and ethically the right thing to do, and I think James would agree with me. So that's what I've got for you today. Definitely let me know what you think about all this in the comments. And while you're down there, if you don't mind liking and subscribing, it really does help out the channel. Thank you so much. And finally, a big thanks once again to Geology for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check out my link in the description to get 70% off your skincare trial set, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.